This video is for YouTube and it's based on the Suicide Squad. Now you're looking at all-time box office records right now. All-time box office. And we're about to look at the top 100, but we're not going to go through all of them. It's just in the context of Suicide Squad. So what has happened with Suicide Squad is it's actually placed right now. It's ranked at number 90 in the top 100. So it jumped into the top 100 all-time highest worldwide box office grosses. And that's amazing. It's ahead of box office hits like Forrest Gump, Interstellar, The Sixth Sense, Man of Steel, Kung Fu Panda, Ice Age, Big Hero 6, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, which is that was pretty. It wasn't that great in film, but The Hunger Games, Mockingjay Part 2, and Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. And I really personally liked Attack of the Clones, by the way. So Suicide Squad, as it continues its climb, it's going to be passing some pretty decent movies, all right? Some pretty decent movies. So we'll see where it pans out at the end of the day, but what's very interesting is Warner Brothers has 3 of its DCEU films in the top 100. 3 of them: Man of Steel, Suicide Squad, and Batman v Superman was somewhere up here, somewhere in the 800s, 800 millions, somewhere around here. There it is, just ahead of Lord of the Rings, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And that's a huge accomplishment considering that these films are all more or less origin films. Batman v Superman, people don't think of it that way, but if you think about it, it's an origin film for Wonder Woman. It's an origin film for Lex Luthor. We're introduced to Lex Luthor. It's an origin film. It's not an origin film. It's a debut film of the reboot of Batman. So you have to consider these films as origin films. Batman v Superman was an origin film. Man of Steel was an origin film, and Suicide Squad. Now, what origin films, especially comic book movies, do we have that have crossed $1 billion? And the answer is none of them. None of them have ever done that. The first Spider-Man film didn't cross $1 billion. The first Amazing Spider-Man film, which was a reboot, didn't cross $1 million. Transformers didn't cross $1 million. Okay? Let's see some other comic book. The Matrix didn't cross $1 million. The first X-Men movie didn't cross $1 million. X-Men First Class, which was a kind of a prequel movie, didn't cross $1 million. Right? Guardians of the Galaxy, origin film, didn't cross $1 million. Right? Star Wars didn't cross $1 million. Deadpool didn't cross $1 million. The Fast and Furious didn't cross $1 million. In fact, it didn't even touch. It didn't. It took sequels for these movies to build up and then become. Spider-Man. The first Spider-Man didn't cross $1 million, right? The Twilight movies didn't cross $1 million. Those are comic book based movies, right? We talked about Star Wars didn't cross $1 million, right? Harry Potter. The first Harry Potter movie didn't cross $1 million. Now, of course, it's not a comic book movie, but we're just looking at the comic book movies. My point being, the ones that actually cross $1 million here in comic book movies, mind you, The Dark Knight, The Batman Begins didn't cross $1 million. In fact, it's not even in the top 100, right? Iron Man didn't cross $1 million. It's not even in the top 100. Captain America didn't cross $1 million. It's not even in the top 100, right? I'm showing you something, right? I'm talking about origin films. My point being this: all of these films that have gone over $1 billion, they are all sequel films or ensemble films, right? With well-known characters that have been established in their origin films. So the Marvel's Avengers, which did $1.5 million, everybody knew who Captain America was. Everybody knew who Iron Man was. Everybody knew who Scarlet Witch was. Everybody knew who Black Widow was. Everybody knew who Iron Man's sidekick was and Captain America's sidekick. And the Hulk had his own movie. Thor had his own movie, right? Well, I think no. Thor had his movie after. But my point being, a series of movies before that allowed for this to happen, right? Jurassic World, Jurassic Park was the first one, right? Jurassic World is a sequel to Jurassic Park, right? Jurassic Park didn't cross $1 billion, right? So my point being that it really was unrealistic expectations for people to expect Man of Steel to cross $1 billion, being that it's an origin film. That doesn't happen. No origin film has done that in terms of comic book movies, right? Star Wars took many, many years before it crossed $1 billion. It's been a well-established canon with cartoons and everything, right? It's been rebooted a couple times too, right? The prequels and so on. And those didn't cross $1 billion, right? So when we talk about Batman hasn't even gotten his own film in the reboot yet. Okay, Batman hasn't gotten his origin film. So these movies did extraordinarily well, and then people say, well, these films, they have all this rich lore with Superman and Batman. Again, I can't understand that reasoning. That reasoning means absolutely nothing to me because, one, this is a reboot of the characters. We had Superman had a very rich lore, and yet Superman Return was a box office flop. Batman came off of Batman Returns and Batman 1989, and Batman Forever wasn't as successful as those two movies. And then Batman and Robin came, and it was a box office flop. So to tell me that because you have these iconic characters with great history, that means you guarantee box office success? Absolutely not. And the fact that Batman, and they did it very cleverly, they introduced Batman into this new DCEU through kind of cutting the umbilical cord from Christopher Nolan's Batman, which the last one was 2012. So this Batman, people were going to remember Christopher Nolan's Batman, but they created this Batman in such a clever way with the comics, and yet with a sort of realistic tone, so it kind of fit in with. You could almost think that Christopher Nolan's Batman is this Batman, but it's not, of course, absolutely not. It's not. This Batman is a lot in a different world to Christopher Nolan's Batman, but it was still brilliantly done. And the kind of money that Batman v Superman raked in, some people said that Warner Bros. Was projecting for $1 billion. No, I don't think so. I think the marketing campaign is what pushed this movie forward too. But because there was just so much negativity around this movie, I believe that, and people were ready to nitpick this movie to shreds if it didn't meet what they thought it should be in their minds. People started imagining all kinds of things based on the trailers. I went in to see a movie, and the thing with me is I'm not like one of those people who has some sort of imagination of how a story should go. I don't do that. I don't ever do that. So I don't have that problem. I sit down, I watch to see what the story is giving me. And I thought this story, Batman v Superman, yeah, okay, in the beginning it was a little confusing for me, the first watch. But then I started picking up, and then I saw horror elements, things that scared me, which was just awesome. I loved that this movie went through so many different tones and textures, and still, at the same time, it didn't feel comic booky, yet it was comic booky to the max. It felt real. Some people have never really paid attention to their dreams. It was like beautiful seeing these dream sequences because it literally reminded me of how dreams actually work. That's how dreams actually work, folks. So it's just amazing how Zack Snyder, the intuition of these guys is just amazing. But anyway, that's Batman v Superman, which is my best movie of the year. You don't get me to go out and to view movies in the cinema just like that. I don't do that. So Batman v Superman pulled me out there, Man of Steel pulled me out there, and Suicide Squad. I wasn't going to watch Suicide Squad especially because of Enchantress the Witch. But I went out there and I actually saw it. DC gets me off my butt to go see movies in the cinema, and every time I see them, I actually see them more than once. That's me. I don't know about other people. But anyway, my point being that none of these origin films, none of them ever made $1 billion. So the haters who kept on saying, oh, it needs to make $1 billion to succeed, they've always sounded stupid. And then you would hear reports, rumors from the Hollywood Reporter and otherwise saying, oh, well, Suicide Squad needs to make $800 million to break even. Like, come on, man. doesn't even need 500 million to break even. Anybody with common sense can see you just have to go check out the budget of the movie. And even if the budget's inflated some more because of advertising and reshoots, it's not going to be that much more. You know, Warner Brothers not going to put out an extra $200 million to get reshoots, and obviously not. So even if you say that with all the reshoots and everything, it needed 400 million to break even, it's 278 million profit already off of that. It's just ridiculous. Okay, it's ridiculous profit. All right, they almost made 3/4 of that in their domestic totals. So I don't believe that at all. I believe they had to make 175, 350 million, if so much, because advertising doesn't cost that much. And they weren't doing the bulk of their advertising on television or on demand. They were doing the bulk of their advertising through internet. So that's not going to cost you a whole lot of money. Cuts costs dramatically. Okay, so I don't believe that for 1 second that they paid out 800 million. That's ridiculous. Not even half of that. Not even 400 million. It's somewhere around the vicinity, if so much. I mean, the highest end it could possibly be is 350 million. You know, you have to double your budget at least. So just based off of that, man, you know, even if you was to triple the budget, it still won't meet. They would have passed that. And you know, it's at least double your budget. It doesn't get more than that. I mean, at most. So I think Warner Brothers more than made this. They made their money back on Suicide Squad. More than made their money back on Batman v Superman. Would they have liked to make more? Absolutely. Have they crossed the $1 billion mark in sales in DVDs and so on? When you add it to Suicide Squad balance there, not Suicide Squad, Batman v Superman, more than likely they made it, and they're probably still making. Man of Steel in the box office made 668 million, but of course on DVDs and so on, they make more money off of that. But the point anyway is, you can't get better numbers than these numbers they're getting for these movies. You can't. And you can't pull off the stuff that they pulled off. They didn't have all these prequel movies. They took one movie, made it an original movie. Not only an original movie, but then they took Batman v Superman, made it an original movie, a platform to connect Man of Steel to the universe, expand the universe, and on top of that, introduce you to the Justice League with little tidbits. There's no movie that can just do all three things like that, the way how this movie is, and rake in that kind of money. No movie. No movie. Okay? So, I hear people say that Batman v Superman was the worst movie ever. That's baloney. It's baloney. It's the best movie this year. And I have some people who are hard critics and they talk about movies suck, and they agree with me on YouTube. So I know I'm not alone in this. I know there's a lot of people who actually agree with me with this. And it's actually the standard from which Civil War got inspiration to do their movie, which is a hell of a lot simpler than Batman v Superman to start with. And two, it's nowhere in the class of Batman v Superman. And the Ultimate Cut is absolutely a masterpiece of filmmaking, of which filmmakers can go ahead and watch that piece, and I'll tell you why you need to watch that piece. Not only is that movie socially conscious, it covers things, you know, it investigates things that have to do with spiritual things, but that movie questions the fundamental crux of everything, which is how we perceive people in the world, people who may be continuously doing good in this world, and you know they also making mistakes in the process, and how we see them, how we judge people unfairly. I think this movie was so deep. It also talks about the inspiration to keep going when things are getting worse, but you're still doing the right thing. And I think all of those concepts are just mind-bogglingly awesome. Okay. The transformative process of continuing to do good and represent good, it has a transformative way on other people, not just yourself. So I thought that this was a magnificent movie, a magnificent piece of a work of art that's going to stand the test of time. It's only going to get better. And listen, man, you gotta look at the people who actually are saying things that have some substance behind them, and don't get caught up with the naysayers. They'll have their time when everybody believes them and stuff, but you know, truth stands the test of time. Whereas lies, they're just like a wind. They come and they go. All right? I guarantee you, these three movies, the foundation of the DCU, will stand the test of time. And the fools who didn't have that foresight and they didn't have that pioneer spirit to understand what these guys did with movies are going to come back tongue in cheek first and acknowledge them, and then later on they're going to acknowledge them. They already acknowledged that Man of Steel is a much better movie in the DCEU, and now they're coming back now and saying Batman v Superman is a much better movie. These detractors, what they try to do is they try to hurt the movies that are coming out. You're not going to hear them talking much of negative things about these movies now. They're going to talk about, oh, Suicide Squad was better, but Wonder Woman was the worst. They're going to go with that. That's their line of logic. That's their line of reasoning. And they're going to continue to say that foolishness because they have no foresight. They have no vision. They can't see. They don't have understanding. And it's sad to see these shallow-minded, stupid, idiotic people being the people who try to rate movies. It's just disgusting, to say the least. But it is how our society is today. We have the dumbasses in leadership positions where they shouldn't probably be. You guys have a great one.